Okay, so
Right, what you got?
what have I got? Well, I'll start with what I haven't got. I haven't got the. I'd like to refine the name of widgets down to frames because widgets is very broad.
And frames are actually pretty close to what they are anyway.
It's what it is.
Yeah.
It's what it is. Okay, and this one will be a little more contentious, but I want to change context to be renamed as transcludes.
Transcludes. I
Yeah,
read that text in the Wikipedia thing, and you're quite right. Transclusions is pretty much what
dude. I
context
okay.
means.
So what I'm excited about, I got a few little minutia things to get out of the way, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that I think that I got something great to show you in terms of the logical design of how bits and pieces reference each other. So
Brilliant.
um, so I wanted to rename transcludes. I don't have an updated UI mock for you. I I still think that the list of names and things matches that we were talking about in the last call, which is to say that from top to bottom, I wanted to make a couple of additions. I think we should go home, naps, agents, chats, transclusions, events, because naps was missing from that top level thing because you should be able to install naps in your home repo and
Mm-hmm.
then call them up there, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then down below it's just repos, branches, files, no arguments there. Naps, which mimics this what naps up here,
Yep.
because that's where you install both just pure logic naps but also naps with frames. So if you want to actually access the frame, this is how you go through it. You'd click naps and then there'd be an indicator to allow you to open up that frame in the state board.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. That's one of the key maneuvers that I need to master, because that's everything really. That's like the jump from one a state board situation that we provide to one that we didn't, that came from anywhere.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep. That
and
makes sense.
yeah, and then agents. Agents should be. I want to replace that with context. We talked about context, but I think that agents is the same as people, because in the permission settings for the repo, we were going to have people, but
Mm-hmm.
there shouldn't be any difference in how you permission a person versus an agent.
That's right. Yeah.
And at best there'll be a helpful flag saying that this is an agent, but apart from that, those are like, so that's why I think that that's
Yep.
one screen, and you manage all the permissions for all the humans and the bots in one and the same interface.
Mm-hmm.
Events, we've covered that at length. Processes is like how you trace the system and see what's being executed inside it. There's no point putting it up in the home. The home thing is more for your convenience, but the business, or whatever we call this, the debug, the back end view processes you're going to need.
Mm-hmm.
Settings, it's kind of funny because, like, the home section, when you click on the account thing way down the bottom, that's effectively settings. It's more or less the same, except settings is generic. And then there's a controversial one here that I'm struggling with, but I almost think that, like, uh, transclusions and innovations, I feel like it's weird to downgrade the role of innovation within the Dreamcatcher, but it seems to fit best. And I'm kind of like sideways crab walking into my primary pitch of the night.
Mm-hmm.
Transclusions can be used to represent innovations in terms of both stacks, solutions, and other things, because the data structure matches exactly. It's really just typed or classed as something different, but
Hmm.
a stack is really a snapshot of some context
Yeah.
and maybe a short introductory message or something talking about it. But it's really, but that too is a piece of context. So it's really just an assemblage of context is all that a stack is. It's like, here's all the situations that, when considered as a whole, encapsulate this problem that we have.
That is true.
Yep. and
Um,
and I
it's,
believe the
it's
same can be said for a solution. And I'll explain a bit more about that. You were going to say some more.
um, no, no, carry on. I'll see you at the end.
In terms of solutions, so we have this issue where when you have npm or any kind of package registry, those are fundamentally different to the git commit. But the git commit is really what it should be based on. However, the git commit is not strong enough an entity to be recognized as a thing now ready for consumption.
Hmm.
So you've got git tags, which really just name or label a commit as something special, like a release or whatever, but even that's still a bit weak. And so I believe that we can actually use transclusions as a means to represent a release of a particular piece of code or logic or documents, because it's a package format effectively that is open-ended and allows you to bundle a nap, an npm package, and anything you like, a web page, and it's just a container for hash-based content. I think is all that a transclude is.
Yeah, it's essentially a docket of links to other
Yeah, like
things.
a
Yeah,
manifest in a way. And so
yeah.
because of that property, if we just simply add two each extra features to it, which is to say, number one, we can type it. Like, we can say this is a transclude of type innovation, type problem, or type solution, or type package release, um, or type chat message, or type action. Like, I think I can use the transclude data structure as the primary means of cross repo communication. It's effectively a more advanced way of doing chain joining,
Hmm.
and it ties in very well with the user demand for being able to arbitrarily bundle together context into a unit and then pass it around the place, build upon it, add to it. And so what I'm excited about is that when I asked you, hey, I think we need a button for transclusions, I'm excited because I think we already had it, and it
Hmm.
is context. And I think that you and I both agree that this ability to grab context is actually a big deal. Like, it's a quite a major feature to be able to pull in context effortlessly. Um,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's critical for AIs to perform well, is giving them the correct context. It's um, a magical feature of blockchains or blockchain-like structures such as Git, because it in a hash-based system where you have definitive state changes, you are able to insert the full prior state as context if you wish, and therefore any narrow item within it. And then additionally, because it's hash based, it's extremely cheap and efficient to send that context around the place. And so actually one of the key innovations on our platform, I think, is this data structure called a transclude. And that's the thing that's how you represent context. That's how you bundle up a stuck. it's the primary means of cross repo. It's not even communication, it's cross repo context, which
Yes.
is what a chat between you and an agent is. If both you and the agent are modeled as a repo, then your conversation is cross repo transclusion. You are receiving bits and you are reading bits, or you are sending and receiving bits of context from either repo, and then wanting to point at it and talk about it, and
Yes.
and sort of iterate on the transclusion and make new ones, right? So that seemed to me to fit very neatly. A transclude, just as this is a side note, I'm happy to stop here if you have some interjections and comments to add.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, as a side note, a transclude is very easily NFT'd. And so I could represent a whole conversation as a single NFT. I could represent a stuck as a transclude as an NFT. And so because they're a hash-based object that isn't strictly bound to any repo and can reference multiple repos and can be deduplicated or exist in two repos simultaneously, that makes a transclude a very versatile thing. And so we could describe our entire data structure as repos plus transcludes, and I think that's us.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Okay.
My comment was going to be at this level of the naming. I transcludes is kind of in the engine.
Yep. But that's what this interface is supposed to be. I'm trying to almost one-to-one surface the engine here. I'm not trying to doctor it for all the different use cases. I'm trying to just surface the engine raw.
What I was about to say is inappropriate. What I was going to suggest is actually, depending on what the intention is of the user, we surface the type of the transclude, even though it's just another transclude.
What's an example?
For example, going to stuck, or going to an innovation.
Oh, right.
So you've got innovation.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I'd imagine that the transclusion widget, would allow you to filter by these different types. Like we'll provide some base types. You could pack in any type you wanted there, but our base types will be problem, solution, context,
Right.
But it's all the data structure underneath is all just the same thing, which is simply
that data structure should be quite. Can you include a transclude inside of a transclude?
Absolutely. In fact, you're encouraged to. Yeah.
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 That makes it really infinite, isn't it?
Yeah, and it makes it it allows you to do. You can only really do that if you have hash-based data structures, because otherwise, like, your memory explodes when you try and like copy a copy of a copy, and you get this like.
Exactly. Yeah.
The original versions of Interbit used to fall apart for that reason. Like, we'd hit telescoping problems where you'd sort of accidentally included something that gave you that infinite mirror effect, and then like the CPU fan would be like, and then the whole thing's just like clunk. But this one object solves, all of those problems.
I agree. It is elegant.
Now,
because you can have transcludes inside of transcludes, and transcludes are hash based, then you shouldn't get that context storm I was talking about last
context storm. Yeah, you won't get that. In fact, I just also want to add that in a hash based structure, you can't get loops, because you can't make a Merkle tree with a loop. It's So it's the fun thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Another fun. No, I was just wallowing in the
absorbing in the fine sunshine. Yeah, like I really feel like this is a breakthrough for us. It's like it's solid ground amongst what's been fairly liquid.
It is.
So,
It's also quite easy to understand.
yeah, right. When you say it, when someone says it, you're like, oh, that's simple. And then all I've been doing in my spare time is imagining what it's like to have a conversation in our interface where it's just effortless to share files and read files from the other side and share apps and little widgets and things. It's
Yeah.
just all right there. Plus, it's history recorded, like it's history logged, so you can go back over it. It's like that. It's just dumb that communications aren't modeled in a way that lets you just have your file system right there and then effortlessly, you know, put it in
Well,
the chat.
this is why I call it elegant, because elegance in my mind is as close to zero friction as you can get.
Yeah.
So if I were to say, hey, do you remember that conversation we had before turning this video on? Here's another thing we talked about 2 months ago. You can easily, this is how people's memory works. It's in chunks.
Mm.
And then you go, oh, remind me. It's like, oh, right, there's this bit.
Mm.
And you go, all right, okay. So then, you're effectively reducing the amount of stuff you have to think about. It's elegant because it mirrors how people actually communicate
Yeah.
on anything more than trivial hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, no, it gives me a great sense of relief. So a fun exercise is that, like I only did this a little bit in my head, but I think you can imagine or you can talk in the language of repos and transclusions, and you can model any existing system like WhatsApp. And replies to messages are really just like you're causing a transclude of a previous message and then you're adding in an extra message. All these communication patterns that we know are representable using the transclusion model. They're just varying forms of it.
Yeah, and you can come up with numerous examples of that.
Yeah.
A PhD, for example, would be a transclude.
Right.
Because it is building up on previous knowledge done.
Right. Yeah.
And it's adding to that, albeit, in a document, and so it's a one-way thing, but it's just a big meaty one-way thing. But it importantly recalls, this other piece of research did this other piece of research did that, and therefore this. You could even talk about how news podcasts usually work, which is they discuss things that have happened elsewhere. On other repos, they discuss their own previous discussions, but they bring it all into context.
Yeah.
It would be hard to simplify it further, I think.
It's very minimal and incredibly powerful, and those are two. When you got those two things together, you're good to go, basically.
Yeah.
Now, where to go next? I still want to get to the major thrust of my presentation tonight, but I'm just trying to think of the best way to approach that. Oh yeah, that's right. The transclusion, because we make it an object or a thing that you can point at, is a vastly superior concept to a link, because a link doesn't actually exist as a thing. Like, sure, you can pass the string around, but it's the link itself. What you mean when you talk about a link is actually the relationship between sort of two things: the end document or the target document and the document where the link resides or is being surfaced or expressed. But the link itself is not actually a thing. And when the problem not the problem, but one of the consequences of the rate at which we can generate text is that it's not even if we formed text out of documents that we sort of chunked together and pulled together, the rate at which we do that is greater than the rate at which we can acknowledge or recognize those links. But separately, all knowledge, as you just described in the PhD example, all knowledge is actually made up of links that can be made to other sources, some of which are weak and some of which are strong. And so the humble URL link is really just like one-to-one, but a transclude could be many to many, or one to many, or many to one. And so what the transclude object allows you to do is to imply links where you have a document, like a generated document, and then you can plug in a link to a section of it that points to this other place without altering the first document. Like, that's the difference. You don't have to have the link in there for the transclusion. The transclusion can point out both ways.
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is very subtle, but it runs pretty deep. So I'll just keep trying to jab at it.
Can I just interject before jabbing further?
Yeah.
Because one thing that's immediately obvious listening to say that is one of the problems with hyperlinks is the rabbit holes. You click on a hyperlink, you go to another page, and except in your brain, you've immediately lost the context of why you're on this new page.
Right.
Take Wikipedia. Right.
Well, yes, I agree with you, but there are also mechanisms that are being introduced in Wikipedia that help you with that. Like if I go, I'll show you what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
When you mouse over, they will show you a little snippet of it, so they help you stay in context, but also get.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's not what I'm really talking about.
Okay, what are you talking about?
Say if, well, let's use it. Transclusion facilitates modular design. Sure, you could hover over it, but in this context, fine. But you're not getting the whole of what the hell is modular design.
Oh, you mean right? You're getting one narrow. You're getting one when actually the topic of modular design is gargantuan.
Yeah, and it's like I'm talking about transclusion, so immediately instead of a link to even more information, it's like, well, what's modular design mean in the context of I'm talking about computer science, I'm talking about electronic documentation, I'm talking about transclusion.
Right.
And so you're losing where you came from.
Right. But
unless you stay at the root, in which case it's up to you and your own brain to figure it out.
Okay. You could also have transcludes being generated in the background for any given document. So say I start reading this, a team of agents could be formulating transcludes for different parts of this document that are relative to my knowledge tree and the things I like and what I'm working on right now. And so the links that I'm presented in the page are not the links that, like, the machine is presenting now dynamic transcludes that it thinks are relevant, that are like ancillary topics based on my preferences.
Well, yes, this is exactly the power of it, I think. It's on the agent side, not also on the actor side, but on the agent side, it's like, okay, so you've been say this is your current context. Transclusion facilitates modular design. What you'd want is the agent to then go and look at modular design and saying, well, you just stated something. Facilitates modular design? I don't know what that is. Right, okay, I'm going to go look at modular design. Modular design, huge topic. But immediately you can like hone it down and go, right. So by transclusion, really, it's this part of modular design that really is interesting here.
Right.
And then you can bring that back to the conversation.
Right. So, The point I really want to get to is that even in Project Xanadu, where they talk about transclusion, or even invented the word transclusion, they still don't treat a transclusion as a first class object. It is still just a relationship between two things. And so that means that if your source document does not have the transclusion in it, there's no way to make one that goes from it other than altering the document. And so having a transclude as a thing means that I can point the origin of the transclude at a thing without the thing's cooperation. So I don't need to operate or modify the document in any way to represent this transclude.
Yeah.
When you can do that, now you can start retrofitting transcludes, because we have AI to sort of narrow down the places where probably the original source of that information was. But now you can also pay by transclude, where it's not you're not just paying the bearer of the information, you're paying the AI calculated transclude origins of what you're reading. Like every time I read E equals MC squared, Albert Einstein gets a little tip because there's a transclude that points back to something about his work.
Yeah, but Einstein also his transclude would include Niels Bohr, for example.
That's right. And to be able to walk that graph to understand these types of relationships is something that's been robbed from us. It's incredibly hard to navigate through what was happening in Einstein's time that caused for him to come up with these things. You know, what other theories was he nearly at? Who else around, right?
And you know, who's this Chandrasekhar guy? Who influenced, which is part.
Right.
It's like
right. And so you should be able to, on the fly, walk these reverse engineered transcludes, and your AI just keeps on generating the next visible plane of reverse transcludes. So if you want, you can go down the rabbit hole endlessly, because the AI is allowing you to see these relationships, which I can't get out of ChatGPT. You know, I talk about Niels Bohr and I get cool stuff, and then like one or two tiny little links, and I'm like, no, like I want to see something that, you know, obviously I'm talking about this topic for the last few days. Surely you know that I'd want to see this kind of reverse transclusion ranked highly. So you could take these like knowledge crawls that would take you in places that have never really been documented.
It is like a knowledge crawl. Well, it's like maybe not a knowledge crawl, but yeah, it's like the context. What was the context in which we've been talking?
The context crawl.
The thing I'm talking about. What was the context it was being talking about?
Yeah, and it's possible to reverse engineer it, so you can like synthesize the provenance and walk it, and the LLMs right now contain enough to do that. O3 could walk you anywhere that you can imagine, and you would stay interested. And you would be able to move in and out and roll up the tree and down, and you'd add little bits, and you'd be like, oh, what about this thing? And then it would generate a new transclusion to include your stated preference or question right then. So this gets super fun, all right? But this is not the I think I've laid out enough groundwork to talk about the primary thing, okay?
I'm just getting quite excited about this idea because
all I think okay, so this I know this sounds might sound a little bold, and I'm even embarrassed to say it, but with the transclude object, I've been going through the principles of Xanadu plus drawing on the things that I know about Xanadu. And I do believe that with the transclude being a first class object, we can meet all of the principles of Xanadu and provide a very workable, useful, addictive, powerful system. And if what I'd like to do is, I don't know, hear your thoughts on that. You might be like, dude, calm down, you're just going insane. But also, it would be nice to go through the principles of Xanadu with you and make sure that I haven't fucking lost it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Principles of Xanadu.
We have solved what a 50-year-old problem.
More than that, man. 1963.
60-year-old problem.
It's an old one, eh?
Yeah.
And Jeff Atwood, I mean, this is a big dog in the programming world. You know, like a lot of people know about Xanadu, but here we go. Principles. Every Xanadu server is uniquely and securely identified. Now, I think that we want to replace the word server with repo.
Yeah. It's a place that work is done, stored.
Collections of work are
machine type.
Curated, modified, hauled in, stored, etc.
Yeah.
Repos are identified by their public key, so that's unique.
Yeah.
Every Xanadu server can be operated independently or in a network. You could say that that's true of repos. You can have collections of repos, networks of repos. If what they mean here does not translate to repos, because I've been thinking of a repo as a virtualized server.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's not possible, simply because the repo has processes, it's got calculations that are happening, and it represents the state of those, and it has processes, it has data.
I think number 2 stands because you could take a simple repo that is your Dear Diary operated independently. Yeah.
Yeah. You could also take a separate view that they're talking about what we call the artifact hosting environment, and it's also possible to run your own version or run a standalone sitting on a dusty computer in the corner version, as well as a cloud version, and multiple cloud versions will be able to talk to each other about the repos and the repos and transcludes that they hold. So I think that holds these two are true either way.
I think you're right.
Yep. Every user is uniquely and securely identified. Well, we have we got Privy, which gives us web logins. They create a distributed ID for each user.
Does 3 imply a one-to-one user to identity? It doesn't. Every user is uniquely and securely identified.
Yeah, unique is one-to-one.
User is one-to-one.
Yeah, so user definitely means human in 1963.
Yeah.
But we also apply that to agents, and we're like, well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but we also allow actors to have multiple identities.
Yeah, but then you are a different user at that point.
Yeah. So,
if you use a persona,
user does not equal actor. Would be a true statement.
Right, but we don't even know what an actor is, because you can, even though we allow you to make personas for your own convenience, you could also completely generate a new Ethereum address and then log into the system as someone completely new. And we're
that is true.
You are securely identified, though.
Since we're doing a walkthrough, I'm going to be slightly pedantic, but do stop me. Take an agent. An agent is a running agent with a context on a transclude, but it's also can be stored itself statically, and then a new instance of that same agent spun up. And so this unique identification piece starts to get fuzzy when you're talking about. Okay, so
well, from the design, how I implemented this, unique means has a private key stored somewhere.
right.
And if you lose the private key, then you lost you're insecure. You've been breached. You lost.
Yeah. And that private key is generated. Say, if I was to spin up a new instance of HAL,
yeah,
that's got a new key.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because
really every key is uniquely and securely identified.
Yeah, but that simplifies it so much that you lose the original point. Every single repo has a soul branch. Even when you clone a repo, it makes a new soul branch. The soul branch holds the crypto keys. And so that's what keeps the repos unique. And by virtue of the fact that a user is just a repo anyway, that's what also keeps the users unique. You can have multiple user accounts. No one can stop you. That's not, I don't think point 3 is asking for the participants to be soulbound.
So if we were to replace the user with soul branch, every soul branch is uniquely and securely identified. Are we losing anything?
Yeah, I don't think that makes sense. I don't think it makes sense. I think that this is saying that in contrast to the opposite of number 3 would be somewhere like Wikipedia, where there's a lot of people don't log in. They're not identifiable. You can't.
All right, okay. So really, this is come down to who did that.
Who did it? Who that?
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
It says nothing about the real world relationship. It's just saying that are the users countable? Like, is it, you can distinguish who did what when?
So here's another way to rephrase it, maybe a better way. Every event can be tracked back to an entity that is uniquely and securely identified.
Yep. Every state change. How about every state change? Every state change is either directly or consequently triggered by a unique and securely identified cause or source of causes.
I think that captures the spirit of it.
The spirit of it,
say back in '63, they had no idea.
63 had no idea, right? But a lot of these things, you can see what they're trying to get at. Yeah. And I would take that Xanadu, if we now stand on this sort of this privileged view of having transclusions, we've got Git, we've got blockchains, we've got massive internet, we've got AIs, we've got all these new concepts that are still just computing, working its way through the logical consequences of what computation means. I think that if we stand there, we can see that Xanadu, that the World Wide Web is like, the internet is like this thin little layer where you're like, that's super useful and blah, 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 blah. And then the web with hyperlinks is like a notch up. And then Xanadu was like a big leap above, but was too complicated to get going. But Xanadu isn't the peak. There's like an absolute version when you start dealing with like, what is the absolute fullness of where transcludes and repos takes you. And it's something, repos transcludes, blockchains, AI, cryptocurrencies, micropayments, all those things. Once you consider that, that's like Xanadu plus, because it's like, they couldn't, right?
Yeah. And they had no reason to answer that question.
No. And you couldn't really talk about this absolute, just like you can't really talk about the Carnot cycle unless you understand something about a basic energy extraction cycle anyway. And only after a couple of iterations where people get better and better, and you're like, well, where does this go? And then someone's like, I can sort of guess at a limiting form here, and then they go looking for the definition of the limiting form. I say to you that we can go looking for the definition of the limiting form if you take all of the basic concepts being expressed here, such as connection between information, generation, user pays, user retrieves. All these concepts can be extrapolated to a theoretical maximum that I don't think Xanadu fully captured, but it captured a hell of a lot more of it than the World Wide Web.
I think you're right. And number three there kind of pokes or begs a question about why did they include that? And it was in order to find the provenance of states.
Well, they wanted the royalty system in there, right? So they needed provenance, but they also wanted royalties. It's like who used it was number one, but who do I owe was number two.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Can I move on?
Yeah, go for it.
Number four, every user can search, retrieve, create, and store documents. Well, that's
done.
Trivial. Yeah. Number five, every document can consist of any number of parts, each of which may be of any data type. So that's a combination of transclusion plus Git repos, where Git repos are the special case where they're the base form that you can't, they're untranscluded, and then a transclusion includes like one or more Git objects.
So would it be more accurate to change the word document to repo? Or...
I don't think so. I think what they really were getting at with document is like any grouping of information or any set of information. Like a document's just like a set.
Sounds like a repo. It also sounds like a transclusion.
Yeah, but every document, I mean, a repo contains multiple documents. How you form that document, it's basically just saying that, can I make a document that is the sum of other documents assembled in some sort of a way? That's all I think that's saying.
So it's closer to transclusion in that way.
Well, it's saying that the documents are transclusion capable. Just because you could use a transclusion doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah, and they say that there, every document can.
Right, yeah, right.
Say must.
Right. And so, but the way I would see transclusions working in our system is that you would have the document, and then you would have the transclusions as separate files, and the transclusions actually point to the document, but the document doesn't need to point to the transclusions. Now, if the document does point to the transclusions, it can do it in two ways. It can point to them in terms of references, where the it's not an exact import or an exact inclusion of the data that the transclude represents, or we should be able to have a very small, simple convention like markdown links or something, where instead of it being a URL, it points to the transclusion object, and it can optionally point to the transclusion object and optionally a byte range.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, you've achieved number 5.
And of course, in this context, I suggest that transclusion also counts as a document in itself.
Yes, it does. Yeah. The transcluded document. I think there's a third way, which is I don't know if it's even worth mentioning, but the third way is that you include the copied value of what the transclude represented, and then the transclude just points at the byte range in the document that's presenting that. And so whilst the transclude link is not directly in the document, the fact that you can look it up and generate it and know that the transcluded piece is this bit, even though the document itself didn't say it, is, I believe, equivalent, and that's going beyond what Xanadu was. Like that's part of Xanadu Plus.
It's still compatible though, because
Yeah.
we're saying any data of any data type.
Yep.
You just described a data type.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Number
that
6.
doesn't break. Yep. Number 6.
These are hard things. A lot of these things.
Oh, these guys were brilliant.
I know.
Imagine generating this out of like clean cloth, you know.
Yeah. They also,
Uncut
though,
cloth.
they had the advantage, though, that they hadn't grown up with the World Wide Web, and so they hadn't been told to think a certain way yet.
Yeah.
So there's that advantage too.
They
Like,
weren't in the local minima of the web.
like I often wonder how advantageous would like human number 6 in the world, right? No one to tell him how to view the world. How, you know, what are you? Obviously, you're gonna just see things closer to what they are rather than this confused
Everything
jumble.
is from uncut cloth.
Yeah. Okay, number 6. Every document can contain links of any type, including virtual copies or transclusions to any other document in the system accessible to its owner.
Yeah. That's covered, isn't it? I think.
Right, yeah, so a link is different to containing the data because it's just simply pointing or jumping you off somewhere, navigating you to.
Yeah, but yes, I agree. But
Yep.
they've got including transclusions there. So sure, you could have links, but transclusions are the base brick.
Right, but you can also point to or link to a transclusion. So that's a way of having a transclusion that points at another transclusion.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or we can invent a simple syntax for a document to be able to point at a transclusion rather than include the transclusion. So you're like,
well, a link
that's a
is
hyperlink.
bit like a hyperlink is a bit like a dumb transclusion.
Well, it's like a number 6 transclusion, right? A hyperlink is exactly a number 6 because it's like if the thing that it pointed at was a transclusion, then a hyperlink would be number 6 because it's in line with the document. It doesn't replace the document. It annotates the document with some linking information.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Did you really do a dissertation on the hyperlink?
Yes, that was my honors degree.
The hyperlink. So we could say to some degree you are an expert in this hyperlinking discussion.
Well, yeah, sort of. Well,
sort of.
It was
Well,
done in.
I mean, I haven't written a PhD on hyperlinking or anything
in
for that matter.
1993. So the hyperlink was already a thing. But yeah, that was my my dissertation was on hyperlinks.
Okay, well, I'll trust that you know a bit about that topic then.
Well, I've not really revisited it, so I might be out of date. But they have been remarkable. I also know the guy who owned and sold the patent to hyperlinks.
I didn't even think you could patent hyperlinks. Maybe we should go patent transcludes.
Maybe he used to be my chairman.
Chairman?
Yeah, he used to be my chairman when we were doing computer games.
I had a chairman once. Number 7. Links are visible and can be followed from all endpoints. Now, I think that means that so visible is really just depends on the viewer you fire up. And
permissions.
yeah.
And discoverability. Yeah.
All endpoints means that this is the curly one. It means that the link is visible bidirectionally. And that's why I think that unless you make that link be a first-class object in the system, make it a real thing, you can't get that two-way view because now you need both objects to coordinate, both source and destination to coordinate if you want to see it bidirectionally. But by introducing a third object, the source and destination can remain ignorant or independent or immutable, and it's just the transclude itself that's been modified.
Can you restate that?
To make a two-way link requires a modification to the source document and the destination document. I don't like changing things. I don't think that linking a document should change the document in any way unless you're building up the document by means of the parts that it links to.
Yes.
And you certainly shouldn't alter the source record. In fact, you may not be able to alter the source record. And so now you need to store what the destination of the links is somewhere. Enter a company named Google, who
Yeah, I was
began to
about to
see
say
the
that.
value in storing
what
that
they did.
piece of information, which was wondrously lost on a URL. You're like,
Yeah.
who linked to me? I don't know. Pay me money. But so if you make a third object from, you got source, destination, and now this link that we call a transclude is now this thing that knows about both ends and doesn't need the cooperation of it, which means that I can link to and link from documents that I'm hostile to, that they don't want to know about me, but I can still point at them and include them in my work.
Yes.
Right? And so that's the key innovation, I think, is to make a link a thing, because a link wasn't a thing before today, to me anyway.
Yeah. Well, it was a dumb thing. Well, it was like not.
It wasn't
dumb
a thing.
It was it wasn't an independent thing.
Yeah. And so a first class thing in programming language theory, an entity is first class if it can appear anywhere that any other value can. You can create it at runtime, pass it to functions, store it in variables, and put it in collections and return it from calls. Now that is not true of a hypertext link. But if we make an object that looks loosely like this structure, I will modify that significantly, but it's a structure, a standard, simple, basic structure.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a transclude.
Right. Yes. It's
Now it's classed. You can do
Yeah.
magical things with it. You can update it. You can go both ways in it. You can turn it into an NFT. You can generate it on the fly. You can create versions of it. You can do, like you can modify it, repoint it, heal it, upgrade it, correct it, even without ever altering the hash of the original documents that are involved in it.
Yes.
And so it makes this extra dimension where you, first of all, you got the information, but now you've got this extra dimension of the relationships between them that have been embodied in a thing. And I don't know why links aren't treated as things more often, but I do know from programming that when you start treating the future as an object, like in programming it's called a promise, that opens up a huge door in how you can think about the world and modeling the world. And so being able to model relationships as a thing gives me that same feeling that it gave me when I first understood promises, where I can say this object represents what this thing's gonna be, and now you can work with it as though you had it, but under the hood it knows it's not there yet, but as soon as it is, all these things you did to it and said about it are gonna become real.
Right. Which is basically, stuck. It is a free-floating idea.
That's right. And that's why a stuck is a transclude, because it can pull in arbitrary context from anywhere. It can be linked. It can point to things. Things can link to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can get stucks on stucks.
Stucks on stucks. Yeah.
Stuck. Always been the gnarly bit for me. Because,
no, but when you think about it in transcludes, it all makes sense, right? Because you're like a thing of a thing.
Because remember, way back when we used to chew the fat about all we need is unlimited power and atomic printers, and we're off. And it's like, well, you could state those as stocks, but getting there is going to be quite hard. and so you can point to those in both directions of
Yeah,
saying, well, to get unlimited power,
yeah,
fusion, and it's
yeah.
like,
Like you can
oh, okay.
cascade them, even though they're not solved. You can make cascades that come off them as though they were solved, and you
Which
can
is
reason
exactly
about that.
how scientific research works. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like a big gnarly problem
Mm,
with dark matter.
right.
It's like, oh, right.
Like I'm finding like it's so easy to think about all of our concepts if you just call them transcludes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Very easy. Okay, move on to number 8.
Yep. Permission to link
Permission to
document
link to a document is
explicitly granted.
explicitly granted by the act of publication. Well, as a transclude, I almost don't need that, right? I can point at it, and then
Um. Um.
if I can read it, I can
What's
point
the
to it.
act of what's the act of publication here? That's a permissions thing, isn't it?
Publication is a yeah, it's funny. Yeah, they have those publications a new term. Um, Publication should have been written there. Every
Yeah.
user can search, retrieve, create, and store. It should say and publish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's odd that publication just like is like ta-da, publication.
Yeah.
But you could sort of flip it around and say that publication is the act of giving permission to link to. Is another way to reword that.
Actually, yeah. No, that's true. Um. You
That's
could
what publication means.
you could rearrange that as a definition, can you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So just
Okay,
put the words in the right words in the wrong order. Yeah.
right. Okay, so we're good with that. Number 9, every document. Now, this is the good one. Every document can contain a royalty mechanism at any desired degree of granularity to ensure payment on any portion accessed, including virtual copy, transclusions of all or part of the document.
Oh well. time to crack knuckles on that one, isn't it? Yeah.
That was kind
Oh
of our
yeah.
whole thing, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the whole thing that we
that
were shooting
is
for.
that is our last redoubt. The
Yeah,
one biggie. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so the way I've been thinking about ambient attribution now is that in this new model of transcludes, or this, I should say, it's not a new model, it's like a simplified model of transcludes, etc. What I plan to do is include API jack points that represent what the ambient attribution agent would do, like
Mm-hmm.
disperse payment and all that. And so we can even manually click the buttons to understand what the agent needs to do, and then it doesn't matter what agent we put in there, so long as we're not, taking the piss. Any semi-intelligent agent using a frontier model is going to appear to work quite well. And then that's number 9 solved, but only for a narrow case, which is to say the fair case. But because those levers would be in there as APIs, you would be free to use or implement alternate versions. So a royalty mechanism, you can swap that out modularly as whatever royalty mechanism you can create.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about that. Actually, the fair case is the hardest case. The easiest case is give everything to the Pope. Remember
Well, but the easiest case is actually the manual case, and because we're supplying these levers as like state changes, basically config, you can set up any conceivable royalty mechanism to operate, or all of these operations like retrieval, access, transcluding, all of that can be royaltyized or payment.
Yes,
Yeah.
but also importantly, that allows traditional contracts.
Yeah, if you want to jacket that in there, that's fine too. So I think number 9 is licked, but that part of Xanadu Plus is that it has the ambient attribution is this automated fairness focused thing, and I think that goes well beyond what Xanadu had imagined.
Yes, because then you can introduce things like royalty mechanism being future based. We're not going to agree now, but we'll figure it
Yeah,
out.
deferred.
Here's the rules.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can also allow some kind of selection bias, as in people think this is more fair than that.
Yeah, tuning, whatever.
Yeah.
Flavors.
But that I think we nailed number 9.
Number 9 was
years ago.
the thing we nailed. Yeah, number 9 was the thing that we nailed. Okay. Number 10, every document is uniquely and securely identified. We have that.
Yeah, that's kind of a bit of a duplicate from above when you're
How?
talking about transclusions.
Where?
If you go back up to, if you scroll up, every Xanadu server, we were talking about a server being essentially a repo.
Yeah, but a document would be like a file in a repo.
Yeah, true, but you could also treat that document as a transclusion itself.
A transclusion can be a document, yep, and a document can be a transclusion, and they are all uniquely and securely identified by way of being hash-based objects that sit within a repo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's a bit of duplication when we're going plus. But yeah, I think that one's nailed. Every document can
have secure access controls. That's part of the repo permissions.
Yep.
Every document can be rapidly searched, stored, and retrieved without user knowledge of where it's physically stored. Yep.
Yep. That's an easy one. Well, it's not easy.
No, that's sort of fabric level solution. Number 13. Also, like these are, number 12 has been solved by many systems in many places already. So it's not it's almost like a table stakes level.
In 1963, it would have been, but
yeah. Every document is automatically moved to physical storage appropriate to its frequency of access from any given location.
Yeah.
Implementation detail, yes, we have it. It's still just as secure. You can also pull it offline on the edge, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, number 14, every document is automatically stored redundantly to maintain availability in case of a disaster. Yep, easy.
Yes, but also I'd extend disaster to breaks in comms. That example you used to give?
Yeah.
With, someone's got a copy of their state on a USB.
Yep.
And then 3 months later, plug it back in. It's still going to work.
Absolutely. And if you realize that part of your documents are corrupted, you would first of all recognize the corruption, and you would also know how to crawl to repair.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Every Xanadu service provider can charge the users at any rate they choose for the storage, retrieval, and publishing of documents. That's just hosting and a hosting market.
Yeah. Yep. Again, that's kind of
so Xanadu. I guess our base version is just like we expect multiple competing hosting environments to spring up, but the real Xanadu Plus would be the marketplace of like free and open spare compute resources being offered up for consumption anywhere you like.
Yes. Yeah.
Every transaction is secure and auditable only by the parties to the transaction. I just want to jump up. I missed the point here on number 9. We do need to include I'm still not convinced we need our own internal currency, but we definitely need a means of doing asset transfer for micropayments, where I define micropayment as the ability to perform a transaction that is worth less than the cost of processing that single transaction. That's to me what microtransactions means.
That's an interesting definition. Which that would entail an internal currency, or would
not necessarily, because you could have like Bitcoin or Ethereum, and then you've just represented it on chain and then used the mechanics of our microcurrency design to transfer infinitesimally small amounts around, and using the pooling ability of it, you only cash out at a certain point. You still just moved Ethereum. You didn't really use.
Yeah, but it's your point there that the microtransaction is less than the cost of doing the transaction.
Correct.
Points to the transaction is as far as possible. No.
It doesn't need
I
our
see what
currency.
you're saying.
I still don't see anything that needs our currency. The reasons why we might have a currency would be I, look, I don't know. There are some properties like a smoothing property where you want like a currency that if you got royalties and it accumulated, it shouldn't just be in whatever currency the people paid you in. It should be in like a standardized currency, so you don't get like a basket of 50 different currencies from all around the
Right.
world, and then you're like, oh god, now I gotta like smush them all together. So there isn't a utility or a need for a combined currency or an index currency that was sort of just really just represented the balance of all these different systems. But if you do that, you can also include a small amount of growth or inflation based on AI controlled monetary policy that's due to the growth of the network. Like if this thing takes off and you get like 1 million users, then you could reliably increase the value of that currency, and you'd be pretty safe to do so. You could overinflate it and you'd crash, or you could raise it a little bit and be safe. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can raise it a little bit and be safe, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that having a unified currency makes it more simpler in a lot of ways, because if you have micropayments, it also implies the greater the number of payments from the greater number of people, the greater the chance that you'll get a little bit of every possible currency in existence. And then you'll have these stupid looking wallets that have like, I don't know, 160 countries. So plus all the cryptos, it's like, and some minerals, and probably someone will send you some stock.
Or
You
a cow. Yeah.
right. You could have
Um,
like a fraction of a cow, and you're like, I've got like 2,000 different value units. Yes, I could go to the exchange and squash it all up. Why not do that intrinsically? And now, the one major thing that I think needs to be in a currency, and this is the only thing that I'll ever agree to is essential to put in the currency, is that we could bake ambient attribution into the currency. That would make it worthwhile putting in there.
mm-hmm.
Because now every payment not only is micro capable, not only is backed by an index fund, and not only is AI monetarily policy managed, so that if you hold and the network grows, you will gain. Like, not only all of that, like those are all just nice to have features, but number one feature is anytime you pay in this currency, you're ambiently attributing as fairly as the AI knows every payment.
Isn't it? Is it? I agree with. I agree with that. Isn't it just as simple as every repo has a wallet, and anyone can put money into that wallet, but
Yeah.
only the sole repo can withdraw
Yeah.
it.
Well, yeah. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Which,
That's where the wallets sit. But that says
yeah,
nothing about the currencies. But that's where the wallets sit. Yeah.
but it's not really a currency. It's just a number in a ledger
Well, the wallet holds the
with
currency,
permissions.
but we should mint a core currency because of that one reason, that we can provide the overriding reason is we can provide a currency that is ambiently attributed with every spend, which is something you cannot get right now. And then those other features are just nice to have, things like, single unified currency. I mean, sure, people can still send you ETH or
No,
cow
it's
or
isn't. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's not really currency. It's just it's a number in a file inside a repo.
That is a what? Are you talking about how we would track the ledger of Dreamcatcher?
Yeah, well, a currency has got a number of facets to it.
Mm.
It's transferable and it's anonymous and all that kind of good stuff. But essentially, what we're saying is, if this repo does work that needs paid for, then its wallet is decremented. It's just a number.
Mm-hmm.
If it's owed something, then someone else can pay it in, and then you just increment the number. It's just a number. It's not really a tradable thing in that.
No. I think I see what he's getting at, but what it should be is it should be backed by this index fund of all the common currencies so that it has actual value.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah,
No, you could do that actually. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
bit like the gold standard, isn't it?
yeah, it should be backed by
Or a stable
gold
coin.
or something or anything,
Yeah.
but it also, when you spend it, it guarantees your attribution, um, or
So
guarantee.
the exchange only happens once
Yeah,
when you bring in your half cow,
yeah,
and then you turn that into a number and say,
yeah,
I've got a half cow here,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm putting it against this
yeah.
repo.
So that'll be like the yeah, that's right.
And then the transaction cost is only on withdrawal after that.
Well, it's all the way through because it costs energy to transact, but the you only cause the transaction to occur if it makes economic sense. So, for example, if you had like billionths of a cent
Sure,
transactions,
yeah.
that's not
So
worth it.
there's going to be some threshold. However, above
Yeah,
that threshold,
yeah.
then
But the
it's
trick
actually
is
going
that
to.
the trick is that we can process those by simply deferring their calculation. Where you could have like a billion, 1 billionth of a dollar micropayments, and then now if it costs you only a thousandth of a cent to process all that, now that's economically viable to get your dollar out. Great.
Right,
You just
right.
technically process these
Exactly, which is
tiny
what I'm
tiny
saying
things.
is it's in the in and out. Yes, there's some energy and compute
Yep.
costs for moving around, but it's de minimis,
Yeah.
so it meets your level of.
Yeah, and it might be possible to distribute the currency amongst the wallets of the repo, and so that there's not really a central version of it. But those are all just mechanics of a
Yeah,
of a currency. I'm starting to think that if you agree with me that there is utility in having this ambient attribution, it's intrinsically ambiently attributed, then
yes,
that's worth doing.
yes. And I continue to be of the view that there is a need for some accounting mechanism, let's call it a currency, which is basically a number in a file inside a repo called the wallet, um, in order to make all this smooth. Because as soon as you hit the outside world, then you get hit by
Oh yeah,
there's
like
two
wallets have
upsides and
balances. I mean,
downsides.
even in that mock, we've put in Ethereum plus bank balances and stuff. So there's definitely money in there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And on your point on inflation, yeah, it's always healthy to have modest inflation.
Well, as long as it's realistic, right? Now, I think an AI can be tuned to, recognize when there's a run on the money and recognize when it should do different moves. Like, it'd be like an altruistic Federal Reserve, like if the Federal Reserve had brains bigger than all humans and was always altruistic, then what moves would it make, right?
Right, exactly. And I mean, the point of inflation is or modest inflation is to avoid stagnation,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's well documented. Okay,
Yep.
all right. Which one's next? What do we get to?
We were down to the charging. I mean, yeah, we've sort of
Yeah,
covered that,
we've
right?
talked about that.
Every transaction is secure and auditable only by the parties to that transaction. Now, the word money laundering comes to mind here, but there's two ways you could split that problem. The first is you could make it so that it was only ever for retrieval of documents and usage of documents, and in that case it's not really money laundering because you would have genuinely consumed some stuff at fair market price. And so, you know, what's the sinister angle there? Or you could allow the system to transfer value from anyone to anyone. You know, if you're going to have an internal currency, it would be great to make a currency that was opt in to be entirely above board. So it was like you could turn it dark and you could dirty it and you could still use it and it's still valuable, but you can take it somewhere to be washed, i.e. verified by an authority that it is clean, has been clean. You could keep it clean and then only spend or only accept clean versions. You could separate the dirty from the clean at all times because you could store this currency. It never gets smushed. It never gets like, information is never lost. You always have the provenance of where it came from. So you know when you've got dirty portions versus clean portions together. So if you needed clean money, you just only pull from the clean portions.
And also, because we've already established that each user, let's use their words, is uniquely identifiable, then there's no reason why KYC can't be applied on actually getting it out into some kind of...
If you wanted, yeah, I'd imagine that having KYC services in there is a good thing, and having
the weight is being carried in the sentence by what parties mean, parties to that transaction. That parties could well include the tax in the jurisdiction.
Yeah, it could do. Yeah,
that you live there.
Yep. Yeah, and in which case that's fine. Like if people want to live under that system, that's fine. So I looked into to provide the ultimate an anonymity. Did you hear about a project called Tornado Cash?
No. Yes, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
We've talked about it before.
Yeah. So they have some JavaScript libraries that represent the core algorithms that they use to do that mixing trick where like money goes in and then you don't know who it went out to.
It's exceptionally hard. I don't think it's impossible to know, but
yeah, and so we could do the payments using that system, or we could just simply disconnect the payment wallets from the consuming resources wallets, and then you don't know how to match up the consumption with the payment, but both parties know who they are. So there's that.
That's also an exit point, isn't it?
I just think that there's several ways that we could do it. The Tornado Cash demonstrates that the technology is there to do in the open private mixing, or mixing without trustless mixing. That's provably done by them. So we can put a dial on number 16 and you can be like, we can be so anonymous that it's illegal, or anything in between, including reporting to the tax departments.
Well, again, isn't the heavy lifting being done by the word parties here? So who you invite in to be parties to a transaction is the choice of the user. And it's like, I want to be completely above board. And so I'm going to go through a KYC portal. Those guys I know are auditable, and so everything is fine. If you restrict parties to be, me and Benny down the street, that's up to you. However, Benny down the street has every right to audit everything that's been happening.
Mm-hmm.
So the heavy lifting on the parties really comes down to defining who the parties are in the transaction, and we've no right to really say who's in the
No,
transaction.
that should be configurable. Yeah. Okay, so we'll call that done. 16.
Yep.
Number 17 is probably the easiest of them all. The Xanadu client-server communication protocol is an openly published standard, and third-party software development and integration is encouraged.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Done.
Cool.
Okay. So, does that
you're
mean
making a
then
link? Sorry, go on.
that, of course, Ted Nielsen will have a deeper view on how to interpret our proposal for meeting these 17 principles, and in fact, he may have altered or modified or updated them since the advent of AI. But just based on this,
I think we meet all of those and surpass them in some areas that
some
weren't
key
really
areas, like
available, or it wouldn't be reasonable for them to guess where we're at now.
yeah. So, what does that mean, Maxwell?
Before we go into that, I'm curious about. It looks like they've got a few contraindications there. Link rot.
This is a comparison to the existing web, because they're saying that the existing web. Here we go.
Do hashes are hashes susceptible to something similar to link rot?
No, they're immune to that, because the link fully describes the data.
Yeah, of course it does, because if something even inside that original hash was updated above it, then because it's two-way, you could always crawl it. Yeah, so there's no link rot.
So basically, they're saying that let's put aside the more ambitious parts of Project Xanadu for the moment. The current World Wide Web does basically one thing: simple, stupid, mindless hyperlinks.
It's but
harsh. Is it is it wrong?
True, but yeah, no, it's not wrong. It's just there's a couple other things, but yeah.
Like what?
Display data doesn't matter.
But even that alone was enough to build a functional and useful internet for the world, and Google was able to build a $1 zillion algorithm out of discovering the relationship between those dumb hyperlinks.
That bit is true. Is what we were talking about earlier about.
Yeah, and it says all that when the most fundamental building block of the web, the hyperlink, barely works at all. Hyperlinks are fraught with peril and pitfalls even under the best of conditions.
True.
The current state of hyperlinking is almost literally the stupidest thing we could build that works, and frankly, the current system sucks beyond belief.
I wouldn't disagree.
So, to quote Ted Nielsen, HTML is precisely what we were trying to prevent: ever-breaking links, links going outward only, quotes you can't follow to their origins, no version management, no rights management. We succeed in all those items.
And no provenance.
That is there. Quotes you can't follow to their origins.
Oh, yeah, okay.
See, Ted's only talking about literary writing. But software is really just a form of literacy or writing.
Yeah, language. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's good.
Are we saying then that we think that we've solved, or do you think we've solved Xanadu?
Yes, but I'd like to be a bit more critical, which is why I was trying to think about contraindications. We've just gone through step by step all 17, and in each one we either trivially meet that requirement, or meet that requirement, or exceed that requirement. Which means we've got Xanadu plus Xanadu 2025 or whatever. Yes.
Okay.
Do we want to give him a call? He must be quite old by now.
he's very old, and I'm worried that he will pass before we can get this thing done. We should get, we'll get this mock up and fattened or livened, and then once we have the mock, we are able to use it to produce documents. We can make documents that have transclusions inside them, all those things. We can start with Markdown, where we'll just use. There's a form of Markdown linking where you can create the link and point to some other link. So basically, we'd be able to point to like the hash or the reference of the transclude, and then we just simply make a crawler that can learn, that knows how to jump around, and then all we'd do is use a Markdown viewer and then just retrofit in a resolver for how to resolve the link using the transclusion system, and then you're able to just navigate just like you would a browser, and then and then at that point, I think we go and see Mr. Nielsen and ask him,
where is he
what's
now?
different. He's in Seattle.
In Seattle.
Mm.
How old is he?
He's about 80.
All right, okay, so not too bad.
Maybe older, maybe 90.
He might not want to see us.
He does. He's a very active guy. He's a very communicative guy.
Really?
Yep.
Excellent, excellent.
I reckon he'd see us. So what we think we've got Xanadu. These guys wanted it so bad. So do a lot of people, right? Because everyone's like, the web is broken and this is why it sucks.
Yep. And also what we've added into that with AI is an explosion of the ability to create content. Which is going to break.
Yeah, right. It's going to break the web.
Break the web.
Plus, Plus, we actually need that content. We need the content that the humans make to be genuinely identifiable as human content, so that it can be trained upon. Because we need to be able to determine what was.
Well, we just need to know the provenance, because
the provenance,
if there's an AI generated training set, for example, that is of value. We don't know what value.
Yeah, like our network of documents should be the training set at all times, as well as the RAG. And so you're always able to get access to vast amounts of relevant data that's all annotated and quality based, you know. And
it's that provenance thing. It's like
and the best way to get the provenance is to pay. If you pay fairly for provenance, then people will give you provenance. You're like,
and then people who provide it can get paid in order to continue to create content. Oh, what's this thinking?
Okay, well, that was my whole thing, dude. I was like, I think we got Xanadu.
That is something we've been talking about for a while. And you're right. You're right.
I think we got it. Ted Nelson is 87 years old today.
Okay, so about as old as our US president then.
What? He's not 87.
Well, last one was.
Was he?
Yeah. I think so. It's not far off. 1 or 2 years.
82.
No, it's only a few years off.
True.
And if he's still active, that's a good sign.
Well, Trump's 78. He's only really 4 years younger. I mean, he seems in much better shape. Um,
Yeah,
anyway,
he's going to end his term at the same age as Joe Biden ended his term.
right. So what? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?
What do we do?
Build it and then jump on a plane
I
and go
can,
see
I
this
can
guy.
reach out to my old chairman because he's mates with Tim Berners-Lee as well. Maybe we can get a intro.
Maybe we can
Eventually.
get okay. So if we could sort of plug into the old school and be like, hey guys, like, come on, this is
Yeah,
what we think.
yeah, um, yeah, yeah, very possibly. Because we're not.
His
What's our ask?
What's our ask? We want his blessing. We want to say this is Xanadu, and if it's not Xanadu, we want him to say, well, what's wrong with it?
So we just want some of his time, basically.
We want the stamp, right? Because really, what he should do is he should produce like an NFT or a trophy or something that represents the Xanadu prize, sort of like an X prize. Then he should
Yeah.
be, here's the rules, here's the principles. You need to make a system that meets all of these. And then, even if the prize was not monetary, it was just recognition, that is a powerful amount of kudos or reputation that you suddenly get, because there's been a lot of hate for this guy over the years because he made so much noise and didn't get to achieve what he wanted. But what he wanted is still absolutely relevant, and even more relevant now. Although he'd probably be surprised to think it, but in the age of AI, it becomes even more relevant. Those principles that he laid
All
out,
right.
right?
All
And
right.
so to
Yeah.
receive that blessing, to be like, hey, this system, if he anointed it as the successor to Xanadu, or was compatible with Xanadu, or met the
Then
at
that's a hell
least
of an
met the
NFT,
principle.
isn't it?
What's
Yeah.
that? Yeah,
It's,
and then like he has interacted with all of the greats of the internet, because at some time they were all just sort of everyday people into computers, and they all knew each other and met each other, and then suddenly it got big and some of them became billionaires. But a lot of people have met him and spoken to him, and he was like a prophet in the desert, calling out for rich links, deep information, two-way links, provenance, royalty mechanisms, all these things. And everyone's just like, whatever, dude.
well, I might be 1 or 2 steps away from this guy in terms of intros,
You
but
probably are, dude.
well, I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning his name. Eden Ritchie was my chairman, and he was like mates with Tim Berners-Lee, and he was in that circle around that time. And so he probably knows this guy, so maybe that's an intro. All right, I'll reach out to him and see if that's a way. Otherwise, we can just do a cold call or a cold.
Yeah, let's
email.
let's get a working demo, because no one. I mean, it's ironic that a guy who has spoken about a project for so long, he won't want to see more people talking about what could be. He'll want to see it working, and I think we're with today's tools like Codex and where we are right now with repos, we're kind of, I'd say we're like days, maybe weeks away from having a working version that you can at least get the gist of what we're trying to.
Sure, we can. But he'll be interested in under the hood stuff,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
easier to show than UIs.
yeah. So if we can pass his scrutiny, and I'm sure he would have a lot of insights as to sort of how we think about things, and he could enrich our understanding of the platform we want to make. Even if we don't get the Xanadu prize, we would still come away with a lot more depth of knowledge about the
I
system we
agree.
want to make.
I agree, and there's also been such a long time and a period of innovation that maybe he's got additional insights that I didn't write down in the original paper.
Oh, he almost certainly he would, and he's a smart guy, so he'll look at the AI and be like, "Well, this is where I see the future going." So yeah, we'll build the thing. If you could reach out to your connections there and sort of warm it up, or just see how
Yeah,
see
I'll reach out to Ian and just start the process.
yeah see if we can withstand at least a bit of initial scrutiny, because apparently this guy's quite a firecracker. Like he's not one to just sort of roll over and be like, "Oh, yep, that's good."
I can imagine. Yeah, and a whole bunch of young bucks like us.
Yeah, right. Turning up, "Hey, buddy," and he's
Yeah.
like, "You of all people think you can make Xanadu?" Yeah, sure. Which is funny because we weren't actually trying; it just sort of came about.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. So,
All right. Yeah.
did I have any other items for today? Let me see. I'm pretty sure I did not. Um,
Auto clumping of ideas. That's interesting. I've been working on idea sharding.
So one of the cool things about the release of Codex is that we can actually run that on our own infrastructure. If you just give it they gave out a Docker container and they're like, here's how you run it. And it's not like the model that does the churning. So we could probably, with a bit of work, hook that up so that it's just an agent or a service that we can call on in our own infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then we're kind of in the same position. But what I really want is to be able to hook up the operator agent so that I could get a UI to be built and then have the operator navigate the UI as a tester and then feed that back to the Codex agent to go and make the modifications that the UI tester came up with.
Yeah, that should be feasible. Yeah, you give it the right metrics to consider it by. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's me, really.
Just realized something. I talked about this about 6 weeks ago. I've been thinking it in the background about idea sharding, but transclusions actually have just solved that.
Well, should we wrap it up then? I mean, I'll kind of.
I think so.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll stop the video there.